Hey everybody. Instead of talking about EMS and other health sciences, I had actually asked the professor if I could talk about something a little bit different and talk about dinosaurs. As you learned in my video introduction, I dug up dinosaurs when I was in grad school in what seemed like a lifetime ago. So we're going to talk a little bit about what I did in finding dinosaurs. First, I'm going to tell you about the geology, so the rocks that we found them in. And then we'll talk a little bit about the types of dinosaurs that are the most popular and the kinds that I found. And then we'll talk a little bit about the other things that we found along with the dinosaurs, so plants and other animals. Geologically, the Earth is about 4.6 billion years old, and the first complex life, so multicellular life, was only showed up about 560 million years ago. So for the first 4 billion years, there wasn't a whole lot going on. And so just in these last 500 million years, we've seen this wonderful explosion of life. Dinosaurs were found in just one part of that time. The age of dinosaurs is what it's called, and that's the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous that make up the Mesozoic. Only for the last 65 million years have the mammals really taken off, and that's mainly because the dinosaurs died off and left this huge niche of big creatures to take over the land. So here's a quick map of what the world looked like back in the Jurassic. If you look at a couple of things, you'll notice that the continents are all touching each other, and that actually was a really good thing for the dinosaurs. It allowed them to travel pretty much anywhere they wanted. Antarctica's not there on the South Pole, Siberia's not all the way up north, and so it was actually a really good climate for these dinosaurs. The vegetation was very lush, so they were able to eat a lot and grow big and strong, and then get eaten by the meat-eating dinosaurs like T-Rex, and so they could grow big and strong. A couple of things to note is up here in North America, we had an inland sea, and that was a very important part of all the fossils being formed there. The outwash plain, or the delta, was very similar to what we see in Louisiana with the Mississippi River, and that's lots of sediment coming in, covering up all the bones and dead animals so they would be able to turn into fossils. So real quickly, let's talk about geology. What is geology? Geology is the study of rocks, and so in order to find dinosaurs, we have to find rocks that are the right age, so the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous rocks. And not just any type of rocks, but the right type of rocks, so sedimentary rocks, rocks that were made up of dirt. And the most important ones that we used were sandstones, shales, mudstones, and very occasionally limestones. Most commonly, I found dinosaurs in sandstones and shales. The mudstones and limestones not as often. Here's a good picture of what the stuff looks like nowadays. In the Badlands of eastern Montana, you have these nice exposed rocks that aren't covered up by vegetation that we're able to walk around and look at and see, hopefully see dinosaur bones sticking up out of the side of the hill so we can dig into and find the next cool creature like T-Rex. So what are some of the fun common dinosaurs that we talk about? Of course, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Everybody loves T-Rex. He's got big teeth, he has arms that are about the size of ours, and he liked to eat everything in sight. Thanks to Jurassic Park and now Jurassic World with the new created dinosaur Indominus Rex, or whatever they call it, he may not be the baddest creature on the block, but I still think he's my favorite because I've gotten to spend a lot of time with him. Other popular ones, Stegosaurus, which is actually from the Cretaceous, as well as Velociraptor and Utahraptor. Why do I have those on the same line? Well, they're on the same line because the Velociraptor you think of is actually not the one that it is in reality. Velociraptor in reality is actually about the size of a turkey. Utahraptor is actually very similar to Velociraptor, but the right size of the ones you saw in the movie. And I've got a picture coming up that shows the relative sizes. Duckbill dinosaurs were actually considered the cows of the Cretaceous. They're boring in one sense because they don't have the big fangs and sharp claws, but there were thousands of them, and so we have lots of fossils, and so that's actually our best science in dinosaur world comes from those animals because we have more of them than anything else. There are also a lot of fossils and creatures that we consider dinosaurs that actually aren't, so Dimetrodons, pterodactyls, plesiosaurs. We have always thought of them as dinosaurs, but they actually aren't, and I've got a few pictures of all these things coming up that we can talk about what they look like, and you don't have to guess what they look like. Here's T-Rex and his short arms. Poor guy. Always stranded on the toilet like my 5-year-old. T-Rex in Jurassic Park and now Jurassic World. By far and away the most popular creature, and all the kids love him, or Triceratops. Here is a duckbill dinosaur, but this is a very special one. This is a baby. This one is about a foot long total. And my advisor is actually the one who got famous for these. He actually found these in a coffee shop can in a historic store out in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and then ended up digging up lots of them and got very popular and very famous because of it. But this is a really cool duck-billed dinosaur. Here's the diagram I'm talking about. This yellow guy right here is what Velociraptor actually is. Not as scary when he only comes up to your knees. I mean, you could bite your knees pretty bad, but not nearly as scary as this big red one, which is actually what Utah Raptor is. Utah Raptor, we only have a couple of those skeletons, and most people think they're just juveniles, and they could actually be as big as this blue guy here when they got to full size. Here's one of the animals that's actually not a dinosaur, the pterodactyls. They were around at the same time, but are definitely not dinosaurs. Dimetrodon, another one that's very popular. This is from the Triassic. He is a mammal-like reptile. He has bones that look like he's a mammal, but the structure of his body is very reptile-like, and he's definitely not a dinosaur, even though that big sail on the back might look like something you see in the Jurassic Park movies. Here's one more creature that some of you might recognize. If you look here, here's his head, and the neck is curled back in that death pose. And what's really amazing about this guy is he's got all these little lines right here that when you look closely at them, which we can't do in this picture, they're feathers. He looks like a dinosaur, but Archaeopteryx is actually just a very early bird, and this is one of the most famous fossils from the Solnhofen limestone in Germany. It's a really cool creature that sort of opened up our eyes to the possibility of dinosaurs and birds being related. Okay, so now we've talked about some of the really cool animals we find. What else do we find in the quarries? Well, vegetation, plants. Of course there's lots of plants there because that's how these dinosaurs grew and grew so big they were able to eat a lot of them. But some of the things that we see nowadays aren't there, so there weren't any grasses. And so that's actually one of the biggest differences between the environment now and then. Some of the common things that were there are lots of bushes and of course trees. And a very common tree that we found was a metasequoia, just similar, like just like the ones we find in North Carolina in the gardens and even in your neighborhood today. We'd find little sprigs of their trees, leaves, as well as their pine cones and other stuff in the quarry. Other animals that we'd find were small mammals, mainly just their teeth, because their bones were so small and delicate they got destroyed before they could get fossilized. Freshwater clams were really common, as well as fish and crocodiles and turtles. The reason those were so common is because we were finding fossils that were deposited in these fluvial or river-like environments, and that's what other animals lived in this place. Crocodiles and turtles, we mainly found crocodile scutes, so the armor on their back, and turtles, we found turtle shells. So now we've talked about all the fun stuff that you can find. You want to dig up dinosaurs. Who's done it? How do you find it? What do you do with it when you find it? Are you going to be famous? Well, I hate to break it to you. You don't have very many famous paleontologists. I found a whole lot of T-Rexes, and you'd never heard of me before this class. So, earliest dinosaur fossils found in the modern record. This is the number one that we found in England in the early 1800s. It's the distal end of the femur of a duck-billed dinosaur. William Buckland was the one who described it, and he called it scrotum humanum. Sadly, he didn't realize it was the end of a femur and the knee of a dinosaur and decided to call it scrotum humanum. Cope and Marsh are the two guys that really were the big push behind the dinosaurs getting very popular. They did this in the late 1800s. Roy Chapman Andrews, the most famous paleontologist nobody's ever heard of. The reason he's so famous is because he's the guy that they mimicked and patterned Indiana Jones after. Not a very good paleontologist, but looked good doing it. Here are Cope and Marsh. These two guys went out to western North America and went to find the biggest dinosaurs, the longest dinosaurs, the scariest dinosaurs. And all they did, their big push was to show that they were better than the other guy. And they actually, their personal dislike for each other helped find a whole lot of dinosaurs. So where are they found today? Well, the most common places we're finding them right now are in western North America and China. And those two places are common, have some common characteristics. The big one is that the right age rocks are exposed. The other part is that it's an arid environment. You don't have a whole lot of vegetation killing the dinosaur bones before we can find them. So it's sort of a perfect storm of rocks exposed, good environment, and then people can get there. So I mean, we can probably find a lot of stuff in Antarctica, but there's a huge ice sheet on top of it. So how do we actually do this? Well, it's really not that complicated. We walk around, find them, sticking out of the ground, dig them up, bring them back to the lab, prepare it so it looks good, and then we do some science. So here's a few pictures about how we do this. This is a quarry that I did back in grad school. That's me in the back left. and you see these big blobs of plaster, and that plaster is there to protect the dinosaur fossils from being beat up and destroyed before we can get them back to the lab. Once we're done plaster jacketing them, they look like this. Big blob of bone covered with dirt and plaster. That's our truck, Big Red, that would get us pretty much anywhere we wanted to in the middle of nowhere and drag these things out. Once we get them back to the lab, it starts looking like this. This is where she's cleaning up the rocks, getting them out of the way. She's using what's essentially a mini jackhammer to get rid of the rocks so we can expose those bones and show them off to families and whatnot that showed up to the museum, as well as possibly name new dinosaurs and have a lot of fun doing it.